My name is Raymond Dahl. In many ways, I'm an average Scandinavian guy, although most people considered me unusually lucky until I ran into serious problems. At 38 years old, I had almost everything people dreamed of. I was proud to have 2 good daughters, a wonderful wife, a nice house, many friends, a good job, and a new car. I was lucky even at the races. Of course, I've never won big, but as the old saying goes, a piece of cake is a piece of cake. I had enough to allow myself a little extra. The truth is that I was not born with a golden spoon in my mouth, and I worked hard to get where I am today. Honestly, my wife Sandra has played a very important role in my happiness. Without her support, it would be difficult to achieve what we wanted. We met during a winter trip to St. Anton in Austria. I was there with 3 friends, and on the first day after skiing at our hotel, we found 2 very beautiful Scandinavian girls sitting at the large table we sat at. Guys will be guys, and all 3 of my friends started hunting for the trophy, courting the most beautiful of them, 9 out of 10, and left Sandra, 7 out of 10, to me without a fight. When one of them managed to win the trophy, the remaining 2 discovered that Sandra, who was probably their best choice, had already put all her feelings in my basket, and to everyone's surprise, they had enough for the entire holiday. I refused the winner's offer a few days later to exchange girls. Back home, Sandra and I continued our relationship, and a few months later, I moved to her hometown, where I got a job as a plumber. And when the business owner retired a few years later to the sunny climate of Spain, I bought his house too, and his business, which has developed very well since then. 2 years after we met, Sandra and I got married. I had never thought about cheating on Sandra, and until recently I found it very difficult to believe that she would ever do it to me, although a beautiful girl like her must have received many more or less serious proposals over the years. Then I met Louise, which changed everything in our lives for several people. This happened during an information and training course on a new version of the administration program that I used at work. In class, we worked in groups of 2, probably because it is much easier for the facilitator to work when the participants can solve problems on their own without asking him for help. I was assigned to work alongside Louise, who was late for the start of class. The consultant said that Louise had called him and said she was on her way, and because of her old-fashioned double name, I expected her to be in her 60s. This was fine with me because I met several older women with a good sense of humor who were very interested in computers. 10 minutes later, the youngest and most beautiful girl in the whole class came in, introduced herself as Louise, and sat down next to me. Louise turned out to be a smart and flexible girl, so we had no problems with the new programs. We worked very well together and had plenty of time for small talk during lessons. She said she was 25 and was in charge of administration at a leading women's fashion store in her hometown. The course was 2 days, and it was she who suggested that we have dinner together in some good restaurant. I knew a place in the city where we had a good time. On the way to our hotel, Louise said that she had a boyfriend, a good man in many ways, but there was a growing problem in their relationship, and asked if she could talk to me about it. There is no one in her hometown with whom she would like to share such very personal experiences. She said she felt like she could trust me. I agreed, and she offered her room instead of the hotel bar that I had suggested. We went to her room and sat down at the table. Setting the light to dim, she started talking about her boyfriend. He was handsome and good in many ways, but their sex life was far from what it should be between people their age. As she spoke, she could not help but sob. When she calmed down a little, I allowed her to speak without interrupting. Here's my short version of her much longer story. When they met, he was a real gentleman and didn't try to get her into bed. At first, she was proud of his good manners, but then, after 2 months of no attempts on his part, she began to worry that something was wrong in their relationship. I decided to have a serious conversation with him about his lack of interest in sex, and did not believe his explanations about waiting for the wedding night. She said that if they could not find sexual satisfaction in their relationship, then there would be no wedding night. He was a good guy, but she couldn't think of marriage without a normal sex life. Even he understood this, but he felt pressure, and therefore their first attempts ended in complete fiasco. They tried watching adult films, but he found them disgusting and said they were completely contrary to everything he believed in doing. She lacked experience from her early short relationship, and so they had slipped into a kind of status quo. She asked me what my wife and I did when we were dating. I told the truth that we met in a hotel abroad during a holiday trip, and just a few hours after meeting in the hotel bar, we had great sex. Because it felt right to both of us, we never regretted what we did. This was a good start, and also one of the reasons we continued our relationship at home. Of course, there were other things that made us fall in love. After a while, Marie-Louise asked me to tell her what to do to get her boyfriend to take action, and we ended up in bed. She was a little shy and turned off all the lights. I really wanted to help her, so I didn't feel like I was cheating on Sandra. I tried my best to be a teacher and felt that she liked it. She didn't mind when I took off her skirt and top, as well as my pants and shirt. To my surprise, she took off her bra and tights herself. She moaned with pleasure while I taught the lesson. Then I realized that the lesson had gone too far to be interrupted. We had full-fledged sex. She subsequently explained that she did not want to take the pills, so when she met her boyfriend, she had an IUD fitted at the hospital. After a while, I gave her a few lessons on pleasing a man before we had sex again, without pretending that it was any different from making love. After that, I slept well until the next morning and had good sex again, and then I returned to my room to take a shower and put on clean underwear and a shirt. When I came out, the door of the next room opened and a middle-aged woman, seeing me leaving Marie-Louise's room, shouted, "Shame on you!" I didn't care. I met Marie-Louise at breakfast, which was a real pleasure. The course ended at noon, and we snuck into my place to have some quickie sex before we had to turn in our rooms. After lunch, we exchanged addresses and phone numbers and decided to stay in touch as friends. Much to my surprise, I did not feel much remorse for what I had done. I really hoped I had helped Marie-Louise in her relationship. Although I didn't tell Marie-Louise anything about my own problems, I had a strange feeling that there was some kind of problem between Sandra and me, although I couldn't say what. It has been increasing ever since she received her promotion 6 months ago. When I asked her about it, she only said that she needed to think more about work until she got used to her new daily routine after the promotion. It sounded reasonable, so I didn't do anything more. But now the question popped into my mind, how does Sandra entertain herself on business trips? I asked her several times why she and her work colleague Nellie chose to stay overnight in the county capital, just 90 kilometers from home, while at the company headquarters there for training or other business. I said that I couldn't understand why they stayed overnight when they could easily have been home at 5 or 6, and even jokingly asked if she had a lover there, which made her angry, buzzing like a wasp. She said they had worked long hours there before, and the company and their union required them to rest before going home. Now that I knew how easy it was for me to do what I did, and that it must be much easier for a beautiful woman like Sandra to do it, I decided to find out the truth and do something the next time she went there. Things were business as usual at home for a week before the shit hit the fan. When I returned home from work, I found 2 suitcases in the hall and an angry Sandra in the kitchen. She screamed at me to take my bags and go to hell or wherever I preferred, but that she wanted me to fly out of the house as soon as possible. There was no doubt about the cause of her anger. She shouted, "How could you do this to me and the children? I never could have imagined that you were such a cheap fornicator. Who the hell put such stupid thoughts into your head? People saw your shameless behavior during this damn training." My attempts to reassure her, "It's not what you think. Please listen and let me explain," failed, and she wouldn't listen to my excuses. "There is nothing to explain. Are you going to deny that you slept in that bimbo's room? She had problems, and she wanted to talk about them. And now you have a serious problem. That's for sure." After some further arguing, she calmed down enough that we were able to come to an agreement. Her parents were at their summer home on the coast, and I could stay with them for a while until we found a solution. I realized that this was the most serious problem in our marriage, and I agreed to move because she usually calmed down within a few days, and any further arguments at this level did more harm than good. I checked that she had packed her bags and added a few other things that I thought were necessary. When I was loading my things into the car, she came out sobbing and suggested that I call the children, but not her, neither at home nor at work. She promised to call me when she had something to say. I left her with the words, "I hope to see you soon." Of course, I felt like a pile of crap sitting in her parents' living room that evening watching some crap on TV. How the hell could Sandra get information about me and Louise? That must be the damn bitch who screamed, "Shame on you." It's incredible how much effort such a zealot of morality can put in to create problems for people she doesn't even know. I promised myself I would kick her ass if I ever met her again, but he could only hope that she hadn't managed to find Louise's boyfriend and throw her crap in his face too. I went to work as usual, talked to the kids every day, but didn't really ask them about what their mom was doing or what she was telling them about the reason I was living at their grandparents' house. They said that the only thing their mother told them was that adults need some time away from time to time and that then I would come home. I took this as a positive sign. Sandra was not turning the children against me. She even took my mail to her parents' mailbox. I must admit that I missed her like hell and was sure that I would never cheat on her again if this matter had a happy ending. Much to my surprise, Louise called me one day and asked me a few questions about what we had learned in the training. I must admit, I was glad to hear her voice again, and after solving this problem of hers, I asked if anything had changed for the better with her boyfriend. She seemed sad, saying things had only gotten worse. Returning home, she told him that she missed him very much. The first night at home, she very carefully tried to interest him in sex, but received no response. I asked him why, and he replied that he loved her very much, but he was not interested in sex. If sex is so important to her, she can freely find a lover and have him on the side once a week. She refused and demanded that he see a doctor about his problems, but now he refused. She became desperate and gave him an ultimatum: see the doctor at the time she had scheduled him for, or their relationship would be history. The appointment was for 11:45 a.m., the following Monday. When Louise asked about my wife and me, I told the truth that Sandra had been keeping me in the freezer for some time now, but I felt it was time to solve this problem one way or another. She said she was very sorry and asked if I was mad at her for causing me problems. I told her it wasn't her fault and I don't regret what we did one bit because it felt right at the time, and I would never change my mind on that matter. My words brought out a happier tone in her response, that she hoped Sandra wouldn't do anything stupid. When I mentioned that our relationship might both fall apart next week, I asked, "What will you do if this happens?" She answered with a laugh, "I'll find a prince on a white horse and get married." I was very surprised and asked, "Will you get married? Your prince will be the happiest man on earth." "No, not yet. He doesn't know about my plans yet. My first choice is still my boyfriend, if he pays attention to our problems." We ended our conversation with a promise to call next week as soon as anything becomes clear. My feelings after talking with Louise were actually divided. Talking to her lifted my spirits, but I felt sorry for her because our night at the course did not bring her the expected benefits. I couldn't deny that I felt a little jealous of the lucky guy who would get the girl of his dreams if her boyfriend was stupid enough not to go to the doctor. Less than an hour later, Sandra called me and wanted to see me for lunch. She suggested that I buy a salad from a popular takeout restaurant and meet her at a park near her work. I agreed. She didn't say anything else, so I was a little nervous, not knowing what she wanted. I was there a few minutes before the appointed time, and she arrived exactly on time. She was beautifully dressed in a short skirt and jacket. She sat down next to me and crossed her long legs. She was beautiful, and I saw that none of the men who passed by our bench on the side of the path could resist the temptation to look at her beautiful legs. She noticed this too and smiled warmly at the men. Her polite behavior towards me gave me a little hope of some kind of fair solution to our problems. I said, Sandra, I love you. Please forgive me and let us be friends again. Please, Sandra. I then blocked all 3 doors from the inside with boards from my garage workshop, sandwiching them between the floor and the door handles so that the doors couldn't be opened from the outside, even when she opened the lock with her key. Just a few minutes later, she arrived by taxi alone, hesitated when she saw her things, and a sign on the threshold, called someone on her cell phone, and left without attempting to enter. A few minutes later, a taxi arrived. If she could do what she did tonight, then she could very well be cheating on me when she was on trips to the main office with Nellie. I accepted her silly explanation, albeit with doubts that infuriated her, that it was their union's demand not to drive tired after a busy day at the main office. And if Nellie and Sandra could have taken some kind of drug, perhaps cocaine, before going to a union party in their hometown tonight, what could they be doing while alone in the county capital? In search of any evidence of Sandra's possible debauchery, I decided to conduct a more thorough investigation and began with her personal belongings. There was nothing in her underwear drawers, no fancy, sexy lingerie, no sex toys, or anything interesting in the bedroom. There was nothing strange in her case either. Much to my surprise, Louise called me one day and asked me a few questions about what we had learned in the training. I must admit, I was glad to hear her voice again, and after solving this problem of hers, I asked if anything had changed for the better with her boyfriend. She seemed sad, saying things had only gotten worse. Returning home, she told him that she missed him very much. The first night at home, she very carefully tried to interest him in sex, but received no response. I asked him why, and he replied that he loved her very much, but he was not interested in sex. If sex is so important to her, she can freely find a lover and have him on the side once a week. She refused and demanded that he see a doctor about his problems, but now he refused. She became desperate and gave him an ultimatum: see the doctor at the time she had scheduled him for, or their relationship would be history. The appointment was for 11:45 a.m. the following Monday. When Louise asked about my wife and me, I told the truth that Sandra had been keeping me in the freezer for some time now, but I felt it was time to solve this problem one way or another. She said she was very sorry and asked if I was mad at her for causing me problems. I told her it wasn't her fault, and I don't regret what we did one bit, because it felt right at the time, and I would never change my mind on that matter. My words brought out a happier tone in her response that she hoped Sandra wouldn't do anything stupid. When I mentioned that our relationship might both fall apart next week, I asked, "What will you do if this happens?" She answered with a laugh, "I'll find a prince on a white horse and get married." I was very surprised and asked, "Will you get married? Your prince will be the happiest man on earth." "No, not yet. He doesn't know about my plans yet. My first choice is still my boyfriend if he pays attention to our problems." We ended our conversation with a promise to call next week as soon as anything becomes clear. My feelings after talking with Louise were actually divided. Talking to her lifted my spirits, but I felt sorry for her because our night at the course did not bring her the expected benefits. I couldn't deny that I felt a little jealous of the lucky guy who would get the girl of his dreams if her boyfriend was stupid enough not to go to the doctor. Less than an hour later, Sandra called me and wanted to see me for lunch. She suggested that I buy a salad from a popular takeout restaurant and meet her at a park near her work. I agreed. She didn't say anything else, so I was a little nervous, not knowing what she wanted. I was there a few minutes before the appointed time, and she arrived exactly on time. She was beautifully dressed in a short skirt and jacket. She sat down next to me and crossed her long legs. She was beautiful, and I saw that none of the men who passed by our bench on the side of the path could resist the temptation to look at her beautiful legs. She noticed this too and smiled warmly at the men. Her polite behavior towards me gave me a little hope of some kind of fair solution to our problems. I said, "Sandra, I love you. Please forgive me and let us be friends again. Please, Sandra." She looked at me silently for several seconds before answering, "I can promise that all my hot feelings for you have not disappeared. but I want to go on dates with you for a while before I can make a final decision about our future. How about we kick off our new relationship with a date at my annual party tonight, if that's okay? Everyone and their spouses are invited, and I've already put you on the list. I will do everything in my power to save our marriage. Okay, I think if we can do everything without any arguments, that will be a very good start. I'm looking forward to a pleasant evening. Me too, if you accept my terms for our first date. Conditions? Isn't good behavior enough? Obviously not enough. Her conditions were that I had to stay sober all evening, pick her up at her coworker Nellie's house, and take them to the party and then back home. Perhaps when we return to our house, she will let me spend the night there. I was a little confused by her terms and asked, "Isn't Nellie married and her husband won't be at the party? Why don't we go pick her up together?" Because this is our first date. I still found her terms a little strange and suggested inviting my friends to our house instead if I wasn't invited to Nellie's, and he even offered to pay them for a taxi. Sandra seemed a little less polite as she said much more sharply, "No thanks. You can accept my terms or not go on our date." I had no choice, and I agreed, because I really wanted to get her back and save our marriage. In our small town, the annual salaried union party is a popular event, for the simple reason that the union always hires some of the most popular dance troupes in the country, and the tickets and bar are heavily sponsored. For most members, this is their only connection with the union. As usual, office people from different companies meet, new relationships are struck, both secret for the whole evening and for many long-term. Some old relationships end when the temptation to find greener pastures becomes too strong. That evening I was at Nellie's house right on time, and within 5 minutes, a giggling Sandra came out, along with a rather sexy woman and 2 men. One of the men sat in the front seat, Sandra sat in the back middle, and the other man sat to her right with his left hand behind her neck. They continued giggling to each other, not paying attention to me. About a minute later, the man in the front seat tried to light a cigarette. I told him that there was no smoking in my car, which made him argue, and to my surprise, Sandra, who knew that I never allow smoking in my cars, intervened. "What the hell, let him smoke if he wants." I stopped the car and told him, "Don't be shy. Smoke as much as you want, just not in the salon." He was clearly Nellie's husband, because she told him not to argue, and we continued to the hotel where the party was taking place. And again, controversy arose when I drove straight into the parking lot instead of the main entrance. Sandra commented harshly on my actions when I said that we would all go together. She was completely different from the lovely Sandra I met in the park at lunch and ignored me throughout the entire trip. I began to fear the worst this evening. How right I was. In the bright light in the building, I noticed that Sandra and her friend's eyes didn't look the way they should. No doubt they took drugs. After some communication, I apparently became invisible to Sandra. It was time for dinner, which was served on small tables for 4 around the dance floor as couples sat together. As expected, Sandra's boyfriend sat down next to her, and I felt like I was a poor camel with the last straw on its back. I lightly tapped him on the shoulder and said, "Sorry, Charlie, but you sat on my chair." All 4 people at the table smiled, and Sandra said to me, "Be a good boy and find an empty seat at some other table. I'll talk to you later." This caused the rest of the trio to laugh loudly. I had enough, and I shouted loudly, causing people to stare at us. "Get out of my place before I count to 3. I don't think they expected anything like that from me, because it ended their laughter, but there was no attempt on the part of Sandra's boyfriend to get up. 1, 2, 3. On the count of 3, I hit him hard in the face with my right fist, causing him to topple over along with the chair. Trying to keep him from falling, I grabbed his hair with my left hand, but only tore off his wig, and he fell and hit his head on the floor. I threw the wig on the table, causing Sandra and Nellie to scream. When the man with the wig lay down on the floor with his legs spread on either side of the chair, I couldn't resist the temptation to kick him in the groin with my heel. He began to squirm like a worm. I took a jug of ice water from the table and poured it all over him. After that, he took the tablecloth and pulled it off so that everything from the table fell on Nellie and her husband, and shouted, "You fucking idiots wanted to play dirty games with me?" Sandra started screaming, "I will divorce you. I'll get a divorce." I shouted back, "I'm looking forward to it, you damn slut in the company of drug addicts. Today, your ass will not be in my house." The entire incident lasted only a few seconds, and no one tried to stop me as I left the dance hall. In the car on the way to Sandra's parents' house to pick up my things, I was overcome with remorse and asked myself, what the hell have I done? But then he calmed down and asked himself, what the hell did Sandra do? After a quick stop at Sandra's parents' house, I hurried home to my place. The house was dark, as expected, so I entered. Everything was as usual except that on the kitchen table there was an empty ice bucket and a tray with 2 champagne glasses and a red rose. There was a third glass next to the tray. In the refrigerator, I found a bowl of strawberries and a bottle of French champagne. Sandra wanted to celebrate something, but why 3 glasses? And why are 2 of them on the tray and 1 next to them? I decided to take a closer look at the house. There was nothing unusual in the living room, but in the bedroom, a new red sheet was made on the matrimonial bed and large bouquets of red roses stood on both bedside tables. Sandra prepared the room for a romantic night of love. The only question was, who is the lucky one? After her behavior earlier in the evening, it couldn't have been me. Maybe this is the wig that I kicked in the groin. Now it's clear why there are 3 champagne glasses. The third must have been intended for me while he and the wig had sex in my bed. Sandra must have gone completely crazy to think that I would accept such humiliation in my own home. That's why this stupid humiliation happened at her union party. She must know that several of the guests at the party are members of my golf club, and that no one would want to play with me if I acted like the spineless weakling she expected me to be. How could she hate me so much just hours after our nice lunch in the park? She is right that divorce is now the only possible solution. I folded the red sheets and placed them at the doorstep along with her ice bucket champagne, a tray with 3 champagne flutes, strawberries, and an A4 note that said, Sandra's brothel has moved to a new location. Address unknown. I then blocked all 3 doors from the inside with boards from my garage workshop, sandwiching them between the floor and the door handles so that the doors couldn't be opened from the outside, even when she opened the lock with her key. Just a few minutes later, she arrived by taxi alone, hesitated when she saw her things and a sign on the threshold, called someone on her cell phone, and left without attempting to enter. A few minutes later, a taxi arrived. If she could do what she did tonight, then she could very well be cheating on me when she was on trips to the main office with Nellie. I accepted her silly explanation, albeit with doubts that infuriated her. That it was their union's demand not to drive tired after a busy day at the main office. And if Nellie and Sandra could have taken some kind of drug, perhaps cocaine, before going to a union party in their hometown tonight, what could they be doing while alone in the county capital? In search of any evidence of Sandra's possible debauchery, I decided to conduct a more thorough investigation and began with her personal belongings. There was nothing in her underwear drawers, no fancy sexy lingerie, no sex toys, or anything interesting in the bedroom. There was nothing strange in her case either. There's nothing on her calendar, no secret codes, no strange phony numbers. We shared a desk in our home office, with 4 drawers each. I'd never had a reason to look into her drawers before, but now I rummaged through them carefully. There was nothing in the first 3, but the 4th was locked. I looked for the key, but couldn't find it, so I opened the box with a bent nail and pliers. The first thing I saw in it was a binder containing Sandra's salary, which confused me until I found out why she was keeping it locked. For the past 5 months, at least one morning, a month, she had taken a few hours off work, and when I compared the dates with her calendar, it was always the day after their visit to the main office. Beneath the binder was her personal photo album from before she met me. She showed it to me when we moved in together, and there was nothing strange about it. A few old boyfriends and fairly innocent party photos. I opened it anyway, and bingo. Between the covers in the album, I found 8 photographs, probably taken with the 2-megapixel camera of her mobile phone. The phone was my birthday gift to her, and she was very happy to receive it. The pictures were printed on a high-quality color printer and put an end to my marriage. All the photographs were of a sexual nature and proved Sandra's infidelity to me with different partners, as well as her friend Nellie's infidelity to her husband. A closer look at the photographs revealed that they were stamped with the time and date. The oldest were taken about 5 months ago, and the most recent were just 2 weeks before my adventure with Louise. The only possible question now was, what the hell were they doing on those trips when they weren't taking pictures? Now Sandra's behavior was a real mystery to me. Acting like a real slut herself, she was going to humiliate me and make me the laughingstock of the whole town. Now I realized that she must fucking hate me. But why? For me, this is a complete mystery when I have in my hands evidence of her own unfaithful behavior. She could admit to her own betrayal, and we could get even and forgive each other. One thing was for sure. All regrets about my behavior earlier in the evening disappeared and would never return. I decided that I'd had enough and didn't want to look for anything interesting anymore. I locked the drawer, poured a large portion of whiskey, but as expected, it was impossible to sleep after that. I texted Louise. Expensive. Louise, we promised to keep each other updated. Once again, I must say that I am very pleased with the time spent on the courses. Tonight helped me learn the sad truth, that I'm married to a real whore. I will get rid of her much sooner than would have been possible if she had not learned the truth after the course. Please call when you can, and I will tell you one of the most incredible true life stories you have ever heard. Your friend R.D. The next morning, Louise called and I told her the truth about what happened yesterday. She listened without any comments, and when I finished, she just asked, "What are your plans for the future?" "Divorce, of course. But I don't know anything else. My boyfriend told me yesterday that he refused to go to the doctor I ordered for him, so I left him. This is my story." "And what are your plans?" "Not yet. But do you have any suggestions?" "Yes, it would be nice to see you again, on your terms. Of course. Accepted." "And what are the conditions?" "There are none of them. Let's meet and see what happens." We agreed to meet the very next day at a hotel near her hometown. Then Sandra called me, angry as a wasp, screaming about the scandal at the party, how her job was in jeopardy, and how it was all my fault because I was a fucking asshole. I answered, "Speaking of sluts, have you already picked up the equipment for your own brothel on my doorstep?" "When will you leave the house?" "Probably before the new owner moves in." "Want to buy? Every day you get worse and worse." "Did you want something?" "Kick you out of the house. The house is my private property, but you can take all the furniture. I don't want to sleep in your damn brothel bed anymore. Take everything except my clothes and some electronic equipment." "Are you serious?" "Yes." "What about children?" "The choice is theirs, but I bet you will be the guardian. Your parents' house will be good enough for them and you until you find something of your own." "So you have no objections to the divorce I talked about yesterday?" "Of course not. That was the only reasonable thing you said last night while in a crazy state under the influence of drugs." "Oh my God, it's not what you think." "Yes, I'm afraid that everything is much worse. Bye." 10 minutes later, Sandra called again and asked for a car, clothes, and something else. I agreed to load her car with everything she asked for and park it outside with the key on the steering wheel. I put her adultery kit in the trunk. She arrived by taxi and picked up her car. That same day, Louise called me and asked me to meet. I agreed and went to the hotel. We took a long walk and had a nice time, even talking about our problems, which made us feel much better. After a romantic dinner at a restaurant, we already knew what would happen next in the evening. Returning to the hotel and getting into bed, Louise became serious and asked me about my plans for the future. Whether I wanted Sandra back after I had allowed her to calm down for a while. I said, "No way. and asked about her future plans. She looked me straight in the eyes and told me she wanted to get married and have 2 children, and then continued in a quiet voice, "Don't you want to share this future with me? Marie-Louise, are you serious?" "Yes, Raymond. I love you with all my heart. After training, I thought about you every day." But she didn't dare say anything. "I love you too, Marie-Louise. I really tried to fix my marriage, but from now on, you are the one and only." There was no need to say anything else for a long time because we were completely occupied with making love and continued to do so until we were completely exhausted after the 3rd time and fell asleep. After intense morning sex, we went down to the restaurant to have breakfast and talk a little about the future. Marie-Louise didn't object when I said that I wanted to buy a new house and new furniture, and that Sandra could take whatever she wanted from the old one, and if she left anything valuable, I would immediately give it to the Salvation Army second-hand store. Marie-Louise promised to do her best to get a job in my current hometown. I think we were both pleasantly surprised to learn how many issues could be resolved without any disagreement, and when we did have different opinions, how easy it was to find a solution by listening to each other. I felt 10 years younger when I returned from a weekend with Marie-Louise to find that Sandra was in the house, taking most of her things and leaving me a note on the kitchen table. There was, "Dear Ray, I love you very much, and I am very sorry for my stupid attempt to offend you at the party. I was mistaken. No one can blame you for acting like a real man, and I love you even more after this. Everything you did is forgiven and forgotten, and please forgive me for everything I did and said on that terrible evening when I lost all common sense. Please give me the opportunity to explain everything so that we can become a happy family again. I love you. Sandra, your loving wife." What the hell is this? How the hell could she say she loved me when she cheated on me for months, probably with cocaine in her nose, and intended to have sex in my bed with a damn wig? There was no way I could even think about taking her back. Monday was a busy day for me. First at the bank to split our accounts, putting our house up for sale, and then at court to get divorce papers. Sandra called me, and I agreed to meet her on Tuesday evening at a restaurant for what she called a serious conversation about our future. Probably not quite what she expected. Marie-Louise became a little worried when I told her about Sandra's note and that I had agreed to meet her so soon after the scandal. I realized that she was afraid that I would change my mind and forget everything I agreed with her, forgive Sandra, and move on with the marriage. And I heard the relief in her voice when I told her that my house was up for sale and the only thing left to get on the divorce papers was Sandra's signature. I promised to call her after the meeting, but I was afraid that Sandra would use the children against me. However, all the decisions had already been made, and Sandra had only minor changes to make. On Tuesday evening, Sandra and I arrived at the restaurant on time and sat in a separate room. I suggested waiting for serious conversation until after the meal. Once again, I realized that Sandra is a very beautiful woman, and if I had not met Marie-Louise and found the cheating photos, I probably would have tried to somehow save the marriage. After the meal, while we were drinking coffee, Sandra started a serious conversation by saying, "Dear Ray, I'm sorry that I listened to my friend's stupid suggestions for revenge before forgiving you and was not the loving wife you expected from me after our pleasant meeting in the park. I regret everything I did that damn evening. I don't blame you for the damn mess that almost cost me my job. Please let me explain my plans for that damn evening, and you will understand that I had no intention of doing what you think of me. Speaking of tonight, how long have you been using cocaine?" "Cocaine? Yeah, I've seen enough people on drugs that I'm 100% sure those 4 giggling idiots I brought to this damn party were high. Cocaine or some shit. I saw your eyes in bright light, and I doubt that you were stupid enough to make out with a wig in my presence without that crap in your nose. The first, only, and last time. Nellie received it as a gift from her old friend, and the rest of us were just curious to try it. What about your brothel in our bedroom? Did you really think that I was such a worthless weakling that I would let you have sex with your boyfriend with a wig in my bed while I watched or waited my turn? He's not my boyfriend. Ronnie is just a coworker who had to pay a terrible price for helping me get even with you at the party. Have you had sex with him before? Of course not. That evening you had the wrong opinion about everything. If you agreed to sit at another table, after eating, I intended to come up to you and say that I forgave you, and subsequently would be with you the whole evening. The bedroom, flowers, champagne, and strawberries were for you in my attempt to romantically renew our marriage. It's true. Why then 3 glasses of champagne? There was a crack in one of them, and that's the only reason. It sounds reasonable, but I regret to say that there are too many weak points in your explanations. I don't think you told me the whole truth. A tense expression appeared on her face as she replied, I'm sorry if you don't believe me when I tell you the truth. What else do you want to know? The real truth about when you started using cocaine during sleepovers with Nellie. At this point, I know it's about 5 months, but isn't it 6? How could you allow such a damn slut to completely control you and convince you to fornicate and ruin your marriage? Am I completely wrong when I say our marriage was better than average, at least before your promotion? She flushed and turned completely red, answering, Before these courses of yours, our marriage was wonderful. But you're wrong again, because you should know that I've never been to a sleepover with Nellie. Of course, not here, in your hometown, where people know you. Your wild nights were spent in the county capital. I found out at your job and your union, and there are no rules about staying overnight after running an errand at the main office. At the main office, they told me that on some days you would finish everything as early as 3 o'clock in the afternoon and could be home no later than 5:30 or 5. There was no reason for you to stay there overnight, at least not for the sake of rest. I know that you and Nellie took several hours without paying for your rest, and you paid for the hotel with your own money, or, which is also very likely, someone did it for you. Let's put it this way. As payment for your services. Are you accusing me of something? I opened my briefcase, put a compromising photograph of her on the table, and said, Yes, exactly. Sandra began to realize that the game was coming to an end. I saw no reason not to get straight to the point, so I said, Dear Sandra, I confess that I did something completely wrong by consoling Marie-Louise about her problems, which ended in sex. Although there is no excuse for cheating, I will never regret doing it because it made me realize that for a long time you have been using drugs and cheating on me. However, I actually loved you before the damn union party, and after meeting you in the park, I was damn happy that I had a chance to save our marriage. Why, Sandra? What were these damn stupid games after my training? If only you had admitted to your own infidelity. Instead of pretending to be hurt, we could have made things right and saved the marriage. Why didn't you do this? Why would you listen to this damn slut in a stupid attempt to humiliate me in the worst way possible? If you had retained common sense in your drugged brain, you would have realized that I am not a spineless weakling. I regret to say that divorce is now the only thing left for us in the current circumstances. She began to sob. I can explain the photograph. She's not what she looks like, and my only intention with Ronnie was to tease you for a short time. Please let me explain everything and forgive me. I don't care about the wig. I'm talking about all your cheating. I posted all the incriminating photographs of her. She realized that the game was over and began to cry, but remained sitting in the office. When she calmed down after a while, I told her about my proposal to divide our things. She accepted my suggestions and realized that all any lawyer could do for her was write a large bill. She signed the papers that were in my briefcase. We stayed in the office for another half hour until she calmed down enough to go home. Then we agreed to meet again in a few days to clarify further issues and parted. The evening was terrible, even for me. I left the mother of my children, a beautiful woman who shared many happy years with me. Returning to an empty house, usually filled with happy voices and laughter, my head felt completely empty. I felt like a real idiot, but I knew that this was the only possible alternative. After resting for about an hour, I called Marie-Louise, who understood my feelings, because her own breakup with her boyfriend was far from easy. We talked for a couple of hours, and she said she was feeling much better. Me too. The next day, I mailed clear copies of the damn photos of Nellie to her husband, along with a short letter. Dear cuckold, I didn't like it when you and your slutty wife humiliated me at the damn union party. Now it's my turn to laugh. I have Sandra's photos of your slut Nellie in action. I really hope you enjoy them as much as I do. Sincerely, Raymond Dahl. Sending him photos wasn't very friendly, but why should I consider him as some kind of friend after what he did to me during the damn party? One of my golfer friends, whose wife worked at the same company as Sandra and Nellie, and was sitting quite close to the noisy table at the party, called me the next night and said that most of the people at the party supported me, and Sandra's gang left the party just a few minutes after me. His wife told me that Sandra was no longer popular in the office. He and Nellie had a serious fight, almost had a fight in the parking lot when we got there today. 2 days later, she called me again and said that Nellie had come into Sandra's office that morning and hit her hard in the head with a keyboard, and then gave Sandra a real black eye with her fist. Nellie was fired, and Sandra was given a final warning to behave if she wanted to keep her job. The reason Nellie was angry with Sandra was because her husband nearly went crazy after receiving the cheating photos, lied to her that Sandra was the sender, and kicked her out of the house. 2 days later, Nellie's husband filed for divorce. That same evening, I met with Sandra, and when discussing further details about how to reduce the problems for our children in this sad matter, Nellie was mentioned. The huge sunglasses couldn't hide the large black bruise around the eye on Sandra's face. I told her that I knew the truth about it. She looked at me for a moment before saying, "It was you, wasn't it?" "Yes, and it's nice that she got what she deserved, except I signed the letter with my name, so her husband lied to her, accusing her of sending the photos by mail to you. But who cares? Sandra agreed to give up drugs in order to get custody of our children, and to my great relief, I found that we easily reached a fair agreement regarding the children. I then told Sandra that after I found the photographs, I contacted Louise. We met in a hotel and took the first steps towards a permanent relationship, but she has no reason to blame Louise for our divorce, because my first choice was to try to get involved with her, save our marriage, and never cheat again, and I was damn sorry after the party fiasco. After that, I made it clear to her that we would have gotten a divorce even without my infidelity, because I planned to hire a detective to find out what she would do on her next trip to the county capital. Sandra got a strange look on her face when she replied that she felt terrible remorse after the last trip and told Nellie that she would never cheat or stay overnight again. That's why she was so humiliated and angry about my cheating and wanted to teach me an unforgettable lesson to make sure I never do something like that again. She said she regretted it as soon as I left the party. When I asked her why she was being promiscuous and ruining a happy family, she tried to explain that it all started when Nellie took her to a bar where she knew the owner, who invited them to stay after closing for a drink on the house. Instead of drinks, he offered them cocaine. Nellie had used it before and convinced her to try it. She got the real kick and agreed to join Nellie, the owner, and the young bartender in a game of strip poker. The bartender was soon stripped, and Nellie took him to her hotel room. She herself stayed in the bar with the owner, and for the first time since our wedding, cheated on me. Although she felt terrible remorse, she still went to a bar with Nellie on their next trip because Nellie had sort of fallen in love with the bartender. She nodded in agreement when I asked if he had curly hair and yellow hair. Sandra continued her story by saying that Nellie, who began complaining about the lousy sex in her marriage, continued to date the bartender, who usually had cocaine and usually another friend of his when the bar owner was busy elsewhere. Nice, funny guys courted her, and the usually excellent sex she looked forward to become a habit. Of course, often in the morning she repented of her betrayal, but since it usually happened only once a month and far from home, she was not very afraid of being caught. But I realized that this could not last forever, and decided to put an end to it. I replied that she was absolutely right about that, but that it would probably end a little differently than she expected. After which I could not resist, and said that only she herself, as a mentally healthy and well-educated woman, is responsible for her fornication, and that I would never buy the explanation that it was Nellie's fault that she ruined her marriage. When I asked Sandra if she was dating Wig, she denied it and said that today they hate each other. She hated both him and Nellie because they had persuaded her to act like a complete idiot at the party that night. And he hated her because I made him a laughingstock in the office and among his friends throughout the city. Nellie blamed and hated her for her own divorce, and Nellie's ex-husband hated all three of them. My short time with the Gang of Four was not a path to happiness for them. As soon as it became known that Sandra was free, a line of suitors lined up behind her who wanted to date her, but for some reason she was not yet interested in any of them from the point of view of starting a relationship. I hope she finds a good guy and is happy again. She rented a 4-room apartment and received custody of our daughters, who see Marie-Louise and me very often in our new home. I was very happy when the girls said that their mother wanted them to become friends with Marie-Louise, who was now my wife. After traveling together to Euro Disneyland in Paris, my daughters and Marie-Louise got along very well. The girls felt like they were having a good time together and never blamed her for taking their dad away from their mom. Sandra and I are polite and correct with each other. Marie-Louise is pregnant with our first child, and I have a loving wife. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.